Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today is a very special episode of Splat from the Past because I am interviewing the woman who wrote the very first episode of The Simpsons, the incidental pilot, which was a Christmas special. And that is Mimi Pond. Mimi, of course, is a cartoonist, illustrator, writer, multi-talented, creative lady. She also wrote episodes of Pee-wee's Playhouse, Designing Women. She's written many books, like The Valley Girl's Guide to Life, and her own books based on, her own life, like Over Easy and stuff like that. And I'm having her on the show today to talk about all that stuff, and I can't wait. I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and I get to talk to the woman who wrote the very first episode that was incidental, and I can't wait. I am just so excited. So yeah, here is my interview with Mimi Pond. Hi, Mimi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am just spectacular. This is such an honor. I thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, it's no problem.
Awesome. So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward writing and drawing early on?
Oh, yeah. I was drawing as soon as I could hold a pencil. My dad was an amateur cartoonist who taught me how to draw and pointed me to everything from Little Abner to Mad Magazine, and that was a big part of my childhood.
Yeah, the Sunday comics, like Richie Rich, Beetle Bailey, all that stuff.
Yeah. And I was just always told I was going to be a cartoonist, so I thought, okay, done deal.
Were you into R. Crumb?
Oh, yeah, big time. All the underground stuff was just coming along as I was becoming a teenager, and that was a big influence, too.
Yeah, I was at a Comic-Con recently. I met the surviving band members of Big Brother and the Holding Company, and I was wondering why they were there, and they told me that R. Crumb drew all their album covers, and I was like, oh, that's right. They had the comic booky album covers. Yeah, they told me that Janis Joplin was a huge fan of R. Crumb, and so she insisted that he drew the album covers.
Yeah, I'm sure that was... it was a big part of the fabric of the 60s and 70s was underground comics.
Mm-hmm. Did you know then that you were funny?
Yeah, I had an idea.
Were you constantly, go into the principal's office for making wisecracks in class and stuff?
Not really. I was pretty well behaved. Mm-hmm. I was still a girl, and I was, conditioned to be a good girl and all that, so not really so much. I mean, in high school, I got more in trouble for stuff, but not wisecrack so much as like, I was on the journalism staff in high school, and one of my fellow students in a journalism class had reported on something having to do with the American Legion, and he told me something that they had done or said, and then I put it in an article, and apparently it got back to them, and they were very incensed, and there were a big meeting between me and the principal and the American Legion guys and my fellow student, and I think, well, he said this, and he's like, no, I didn't.
Oh my God. You were very rebellious then.
Yeah, kind of. Not that rebellious. I graduated a year early from high school because I'd been to summer school so much because, we didn't know from summer camp. It just didn't, it wasn't something that existed in the world in which I lived, and my mother was like dying to get us out of the house in the summer, and just always signed me up for summer school whether I liked it or not. So I wound up graduating a whole year early, and was really glad to be over with high school because it was just, bullshit.
A clusterfuck. So, where are you from originally?
San Diego.
Oh, you're originally from San Diego. And where did you go to art school?
I went to California College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'll bring that up in a moment, but I was curious, is that where you found your style as a cartoonist?
Well, what I found was in art school was that comics were just roundly poo-pooed and made fun of, and not in the least bit respected by any of my teachers. On the other hand, every time I showed them a comic I'd done, they all laughed at it. So I had a good foundation in learning how to draw, basically, and all that stuff. But in terms of, there was just no respect for comics. But it was, like I said, it was already, it was like, I don't care, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, you learned knowledge that you still use to this day.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's important, learning how to draw. It's a craft that, there's the world of comics and graphic novels has just exploded in the last 10 years, and I see so much out there that either the writing is good but the drawing is crap, or vice versa. And it's one of those things that people just think anyone can do it. Like, oh, I could do that. Like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
It's arduous and time-consuming and laborious, and anything you write that you want to draw, you have to be able to draw it, whether it's an umbrella stand or a 17th century carriage or a particular rocket ship or a very particular car. I mean, you have to really look at it, study it, and draw it in, not just draw it, but draw it in your style and make it look believable. Because otherwise, people are, going to look at your comic and go, what am I looking at here? It's like, it just boggles my mind that people think that it's just, oh yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I can't do that, but it's one skill I wish I could do because I just admire people like yourself who can do that. Well, it's something I still struggle with it. Every page of every story is a struggle to learn how to compose it correctly and have the emotional impact that it should, and have the drawing look right, and everything else. It's not easy. Mm-hmm. In addition to drawing, can you also paint? I do watercolor. And a lot of my colored comics are watercolor. I don't really consider myself so much a fine artist anymore. I used to do pastel drawing, which I really enjoyed. I'd like to get back into one day. I probably could if I wanted to apply myself, but comics are kind of like my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, watercolors, that's a lot of fun, I have to say. Yeah, watercolor's fun. I was reading that during your last year in art school, you ran out of funds for school, and then you ended up waitressing at Mama's Royal Cafe. Right. Yeah, I haven't read the book yet, Over Easy, but I read the Amazon reviews, and I listened to you on Virtual Memories, and oh my God, I can totally relate what you went through, because I was a bouncer at a bar in San Mateo from 2007 to 2009, which for me, it was like the Studio 54 of the Bay Area. There was a lot of drugs. Oh, yeah? Yeah, a lot of drugs, lots of sex in public, lots of strange characters who I thought were normal at the time and had their shit together, but they were shady as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, those colorful, shady characters that we fall in love with.
I know, it's almost like cult-like.
Yeah, it does sort of get to be like that a bit.
How long were you there for?
4 years.
Wow, 4 years. Wow, yeah, when I was growing up in San Mateo, Oakland was the place that everyone was warned not to go to.
That's funny. Oakland had such a sort of down and dirty reputation for so long, from like the 60s on. It seemed like, this really scary place, but I had, when I was trying to decide where to go to art school, and by the way, this is like 1974.
Right.
You could send away for booklets and brochures from different colleges, and they would come in the mail, and they were these glossy brochures advertising the school and the campus and the amenities and the facilities and the whole thing, and that's all you had to go on. And I didn't know I didn't know the Ivy League existed. It was like I was in San Diego. It was like in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't grow up in a culture where it's like, you're going to go to Harvard. It was like Harvard was just like, this is, you might as well say, you're going to go to Buckingham Palace. Like, people just didn't do that.
Yeah.
and I didn't even know there was such a thing as art school until someone suggested it. And then I started looking into it. I had to go to a library, look stuff up, send away for their information. And I was too intimidated by the idea of going out of state. And I knew there was Cal Arts in LA and Otis Art Institute. And then my mother just was like someone who didn't have a lot of boundaries, and I knew if I went to LA, she just couldn't keep herself from coming to visit me every weekend. So it just wasn't far away enough. So I looked at it, and I liked San Francisco. I'd been there, so I looked up the Art Institute. So I came to San Francisco. I looked at the Art Institute, and it looked really foreboding and cold. It's on top of a windswept hill in North Beach, and there's nobody around, and it's kind of, people weren't very friendly. And then I got on a bus and went to Oakland and went up to California College of Arts and Crafts, and it's this, cute little campus, and it's got Victorian buildings, and everyone's kind of hanging out and, very friendly and willing to talk to you. And I was like, well, this feels comfortable. I could do this. And then, living in Oakland was like the opposite of what everyone had said it was. It wasn't like this scary gangster town run by the Black Panthers. It was, this really beautiful little city full of, really beautiful old buildings and parks and really good public transportation and a lot of very peculiar characters that I just adored.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed. It also has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Like, people finally discovered it, which is kind of a drag, because it was like this great, secret, hidden, groovy city, and now it's just ridiculously overpriced, like the rest of the Bay Area.
I know, right? And, 9 years ago, a friend of mine, he got shot in Oakland, shot in the arm while he was getting out of his car, and
there's that.
Yeah. It was scary and stuff. He had this big old bullet wound that he posted on Facebook and everything, I mean, he's okay now.
As
but
one does.
Yeah. I know. We're in that culture now where anything bad happens, posted on Facebook. But he's okay now. But yeah, I mean, that served a good lesson for me to definitely stay out of Oakland, even in adulthood. So after that experience, did you end up in New York?
Yeah, I mean, I was saving my money to move to New York to be a cartoonist and illustrator, and I was I started publishing cartoons in the sister publication for the Berkeley Barb, which was a paper called The Spectator, and the Berkeley Barb had had its heyday of radicalism in the 60s, and now it's kind of like gone to seed and not doing too well. And so they started this other paper to keep them afloat, which was adult classified. That was The Spectator. And for $12 a week, that was my entree into publishing. And I started sending off clippings to magazines in New York, and actually Sherry Flanagan, who was the cartoon editor at the National Lampoon, liked my stuff and asked me to do some things for them. And then I wound up, she invited me to join them at Comic-Con in San Diego, which I had been going to since I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And so I went down and hung out with Sherry Flanagan and Sam Gross and Mary Kay Brown, all heroes of mine, and took them around to all my hometown haunts and dives, and had a great time. And then Sherry invited me to stay with her in New York and check it out. And it was like the foot in the door I'd been waiting for. So I visited New York a few times, made some connections, went to see art directors. Back then it was like, there was no like sending your JPEGs off. It was like pounding the pavement with your portfolio, making appointments to see art directors at magazines.
Right.
And that's how you did it. And I moved to New York in 1982 and spent 8 years there making a good living as a cartoonist and illustrator, publishing in all the major magazines, and newspapers, from the National Lampoon to 17 magazine, the Village Voice, Adweek, everything. And I moved to moved to LA in 1990 with my husband, and had a couple of kids, and woke up and looked around, and the 90s, and my career was gone. With the internet, with the death of print media. So I've been trying to claw my way back up the edge of the cliff I fell off of.
You were doing stuff for National Lampoon. That was long after the groundbreaking heyday of like Doug Kenny and Harold Ramis there. Yeah,
it was after that heyday, but it was before it fell into complete disrepute. So we still had P.J. O'Rourke and people like that. So it wasn't like horrible. Although I used to joke that my readers at the National Lampoon were 14-year-old boys, prison inmates.
Matty Simmons was still there?
Yeah. No, was he? No, he had kind of disappeared into the background. He wasn't around. I think he still owned it, but he wasn't really around.
Yeah, he was probably off producing movies at that time.
Probably.
Yeah. But you wrote a book called The Valley Girl's Guide to Life. Where did you get the inspiration behind that book?
Well, I had been doing these great full-page cartoons in the Village Voice, and that caught the eye of an editor at Dell Books who invited me to lunch. And he said, "Oh, we want to do a book about Valley Girls." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, it's this hit song by Frank Zappa and his daughter." And I was like, I'll have to check that out. And I didn't even have a record player, but I went and bought the record and took it to a friend's house and listened to it once. And I went, "Oh, yeah, I can do that." The reason he thought of me was because he'd asked me about where I was from, and I grew up in San Diego, and I said, I went to high school with like 10 Spicolis, because these dumbass surfer guys. It's like, "Hey man, we should go pop some reds and get some wine and go to the beach and go surfing, man, it'd be awesome." And I'm like, so, I listened to this song once, I was like, "Oh yeah, I can do that, I know who this is." And so I got in advance. I got on a plane. I went to L.A. I drove around. I went to the Sherman Oaks Galleria. I talked to teenage girls, and I cranked out this book in 6 weeks, and it became a bestseller, much to my one and only bestseller. And I got to go on a 16-city book tour, and it was really fun. And then I published 4 more books in New York after that all were decreasingly popular, and I had every range of experience with mainstream publishers, from you got a bestseller to great, you finished this book, let's drop it down a well and see if it sells.
Yeah,
I rode the wave of humor books in the 80s. You know, it started out with 101 Uses for a Dead Cat, and all those dumb humor books. But publishers were buying them, and you could go in with like a one-page pitch, you know, and they would say, "Okay, great," and they'd give you a bunch of money, and you'd do it.
Yeah, not too long after that, the movie Valley Girl came out. Did you feel that Andrew Lane and Wayne Crawford stole your idea?
No, because it was, any more than I stole Frank Zappa or Moon Zappa's ideas. Like, it was just something that was, in the air. And I enjoyed the movie. This is before, people talked about, you should get an agent and you should sell, you should get an option for your book. Like, I didn't know that was a thing you could do. and so I was just sort of flattered that there was a movie at all. And I liked the movie, and actually I was asked to introduce the movie as part of a summer film festival this last summer for the Echo Park Film Center here in LA, in the summer they have these pop-up screenings all around LA, depending on what their theme was, and their theme was like teenagers in the valley. And so they set up a screen on the street on Ventura Boulevard, across the street from the location of the main character's parents' health food store. So we're literally on the sidewalk watching this movie. Mm-hmm. And it was great. It was, and watching it again, I was sort of struck by, like, it's kind of a bad movie. The parts of it are really funny. It's kind of stupid, but it's kind of great. And honestly, Nicolas Cage has never been hotter.
Oh, I agree with you. I surely agree. Yes, it's a really funny movie, I think, and I've interviewed at least one person from it. I'm trying to get Josie Cotton on the show next to talk about the song she did for it in the movie. Have you ever thought about writing the Millennial's Guide to Life?
Well, I tried to do that, and I wrote a handbook for aging hipsters. Mm-hmm. I did a big outline for it. I did a bunch of drawings, and then when my agent tried to sell it, it was like those aging hipsters were really threatened by the idea that they were that uncool. This was like 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think now...
Like 12 or 13 years ago.
Yeah. I think now you'd have some interesting things to write about it, because, we live in the age of the internet. Kids are more well-informed. Not all of them, but a lot of them are,
Yeah, but, I mean, they don't want to hear about old people.
You're right about that. Yes.
and old people don't want to be perceived as being old, or older.
Yeah. I know, it's a weird thing with the younger generation. So, how did you get into writing for TV?
Well, I thought I wanted to write for TV. I watched a lot of TV, and I got to write an episode of Pee-wee's Playhouse with Lynn Stewart, who was Missy Vaughn, because my husband was a production designer and a puppeteer on the show, and that really ruined me for writing for television, because they took our script, and here's what they did. Mm-hmm. They shot it. They didn't edit it. They didn't give us notes. They just shot our script, and I thought that's the way it works. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote my Simpsons episode because we knew Matt Groening, and then I went to the rewrite meeting, and I didn't know it at the time, but Sam Simon was going through a divorce, and he didn't really want to have any women around, and there weren't any women on the show for years and years.
Wow.
And I was not asked to be on staff, and I never got any explanation why, and it wasn't until like 20 years later that I found out that, they didn't like girls.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, the Pee-wee's Playhouse episode, Rebarilla. Yeah, I remember this episode very well. They're like playing airplane.
Right.
Yeah.
really fun, and it was really thrilling to see them shoot it. Pesa Mertson, who is Reba, is such a fine actress, and even though it's a silly script, she just puts so much into her angst about her anxiety about her date with Derek the fireman that you're feeling for her.
Yeah, and they make her look like one of the Supremes for that date.
No. Missy Vaughn gave her a makeover to look exactly like her.
Right. She did that, but to me, she looks like one of the Supremes. But yeah, Lynn Stewart is a good friend of mine. She's been on the podcast twice. I just adore her.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, me and my mother, we met her at a Comic-Con, and she was so sweet. She gave me a free Missy Vaughn figure, and she signed it. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. I actually wanted an 8x10 of her at American Graffiti when she's giving the finger, but this was okay.
Yeah, she is great in that movie. That's such a brilliant movie. It's a perfect movie, actually. There's very few movies that are just sort of perfect. I think Hairspray and American Graffiti are perfect, and The Producers are perfect movies.
I agree with you. Yes, American Graffiti is wonderful, and I'm always haunted by Roger Ebert's review when he says that the movie shows how great and how wonderful and innocent 1962 was, but it also shows us how tragically in some cases how sad America has been, from the time, the movie takes place to when it was released.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King, all those riots and demonstrations and what have you. Yeah. I also noticed at the end of that episode, Pee-wee says to Derek, "Later, blood." That's kind of racist for Pee-wee.
Well, at the time it was, you have to take it in the context of the time where, Pee-wee just is trying to be cool.
Yeah. It's really funny. And The Simpsons roasting on an open fire. Now, it was incidentally the pilot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they had done, 8 episodes that season, and that ended up being the first one aired.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were behind. So it just, it happened to be Christmas by the time they were ready to premiere it, and that's what they went with.
That next week is the 30th anniversary. I didn't see the episode until 1992 when it was on VHS. I got it for Christmas that year, and it became one of my top 10 favorite episodes. Even though the show has radically progressed since then, I consider it one of the great Christmas specials and best episodes of the show.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure. I used to have a storybook version of the episode. I had it for 20 years. I don't even think I have it anymore, but it's like a collector's item. But there's so many great jokes in it. I know that when you write for The Simpsons, about 30% of what you originally wrote ends up in the final show. What particular plot points and jokes can you take credit for?
Well, Lisa writing what she wanted for Christmas, a pony.
Yes, and she finally got one a couple years later.
And I think that Homer's shopping for Christmas shopping at the 99-cent store.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it in so long, I can't really remember. It's a painful subject for me because it was a missed opportunity for me, and I feel like every time it's brought up and I try to explain my side of the story, everyone loves The Simpsons so much that I'm just the turd in the punch bowl. So I haven't really watched it that much. It's not one of my favorite shows, and I prefer King of the Hill, honestly, in terms of tone and character. So, yeah, I can't say I'm a fan.
Yeah. I liked King of the Hill, too. But Simpsons, has always been my personal favorite, and I also like Family Guy, the really edgy...
I hate Family Guy.
Really?
I hate
It's just not your taste.
It's very male. It's very hetero male aggro humor to me.
My personal favorite jokes in the episode are like when Homer's trying to recite the names of the reindeers: Comet, Cupid, Donna Dixon.
Yeah.
I love that joke. Bart singing Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, and at the end when he mentions Attila the Hun when he's singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And the Homer, hitting his head, and the children react to his suggestive cursing. And of course,
honestly, I've forgotten it all.
Yeah, and then Barney ends up with a girl named Diarrhea. That's really funny. Was Bart getting a tattoo your idea?
Yeah, actually, I think it was.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool one. Yeah, I know some people who have gotten their tattoos removed, and every time I hear about it, I always think of that episode.
Well, I was saying very early on, I thought someone could make a killing by opening a chain of laser tattoo removal clinics in malls across America because, tattoos are... I've never felt like tattoos were a very good idea.
Yeah.
Geez, I'm just so much fun, aren't I?
No, you have a great sense of humor, and you're very insightful.
Well, thank you.
So don't sell yourself short there. You wrote an episode of Designing Women also.
I was briefly on staff of Designing Women, and it was the last season of Designing Women. And Linda Bloodworth it was 1992, and Linda Bloodworth was off winning the election for Bill Clinton, and the inmates were running the asylum, and I had a 3-month-old child, and I wasn't getting any sleep, and this opportunity came along, and I felt like I couldn't turn it down, and they offered to let me bring the nanny with me to the job, and none of that was a good idea. And it was an interesting experience, but it kind of told me that writing for television really wasn't what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. You're a lot of the times, I don't know how it is now, but at that point, you were there from like 9 in the morning till you could be there on show nights, from 9 in the morning till 1 in the morning. Yeah. But basically from like 9 in the morning till like you could be there till 9 at night. And I had a new baby, and there were a lot. Everyone else, the showrunner had kids, but everyone else was single and didn't have kids, and they could like have that lifestyle, and I just couldn't. And it seemed like every idea I came up with had already been done in previous seasons because it was like the 6th season, and it was like nobody really wanted to be there, but it was still going on. So it was kind of a painful experience.
Yeah,
I was so used to working by myself. Actually, I think my 6th grade teacher wrote that on my report card that I didn't relate well to my peer group, and I think that's still true.
Same here.
So I'm just used to. I've been working alone all my life, and working with others is not something that comes naturally to me.
Same here. I'm always trying to get people involved with projects I want to do and stuff with what I write and stuff, and it never comes to fruition, but it's my passion, and I gotta keep going. But at least you got to have David Steinberg direct that episode of Designing Women.
Yeah, he was lovely, and the cast were lovely, and Annie Potts had a child the same age as my baby, and invited me to breastfeed with her in her dressing room. So. People couldn't have been nicer. It just was not the right time and place for me.
I like that. She invited you to breastfeed. That's pretty cool. Did you ever try to break into writing for feature films?
Well, yeah, I've written screenplays. I actually did I was first of 6 writers on a Disney animated feature that was going to be called Wildlife that never got made, even though they poured millions of dollars into development for it, and it just never happened. So, yeah, I mean, I'm currently working on a couple of different screenplays now with a partner, and I just don't have any expectations whatsoever anymore about Hollywood. So I'm just doing it because I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, so you got a collaborator now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you said it didn't come natural to you, but you got one now. So.
Well, one-on-one is something else. It's like working with a group. It's where I fall down.
Oh, yeah, working with a group. Yeah, that can be tough. Yeah, I write screenplays. People have told me I should write for sitcoms or late-night TV, but I think it's a waste to spend 5 days a week writing 50 jokes a day, and you're lucky if one ends up in the final show, and you have to worry about other writers stealing from you. That's why I don't go to retreats or do any co-writing with people. I'm a maverick when it comes to my writing. So, are you writing any more books?
I'm working on a new graphic novel about the Mitford sisters, who are 6 aristocratic English sisters who were born between 1904 and 1920, who existed on the periphery of immense historical events and did a bunch of shit they weren't supposed to do. So I'm very much absorbed in that right now.
Oh, nice. And you active on the Comic-Con circuit?
No, not really. I really don't care for comics festivals that much. There's a few, there's CSX in Columbus, which is really great, and there's Short Run in Seattle, and there's one in outside of DC that's good, but I avoid them.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of superhero comics. Mainstream comics just have no meaning for me. And Comic-Con is nothing but it's become just a vehicle for corporate juggernauts and very little about comics. So it's not really my scene.
I know. It's funny. I didn't go to conventions when I was a kid, but from what I've been told, they were just way different back in the day. It was
very, very different. I mean, the first few Comic-Cons, you could go up and talk to Jack Kirby. You could talk to Ray Bradbury. You could meet Bob Clampett. You have these one-on-one experiences, and Harvey Kurtzman, people like that. They were shining a light on people who had been largely ignored by the mainstream culture, and these geniuses of popular culture who had just been just ignored for years, and they were like, come tell us your stories, and these people were like dying to have someone to tell their stories to, and it was very special, and now it's just like this big corporate monster.
Yeah, it used to be all about the fans. Now it's all about, the pocketbooks of the people who are attending, to sign autographs. It's really, really sad, And I'm convinced there's some kind of Illuminati going on behind the scenes, like they're part of a cult or something, because they act really strange and stuff. And I have a lot, I'm a big horror fan. I have a lot of, horror movie people come on the podcast to promote their appearances at horror cons and stuff, right? And I let them know that I'm coming to the con to see them and everything, right? And sometimes I go and they're like, they don't even remember talking to me like 2 days ago sometimes.
Excuse me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, Yeah, it's just the Comic-Con scene is just, it's gotten really weird. I've been going for only 3 years. I liked it for a while, but in the last year or so, it's just been really, really strange, you know. But you mentioned, though, that you've been going to San Diego Comic-Con since you were 12?
Well, I went when I lived in San Diego, and then I left, and I went back that one year to meet the people from the Lampoon. But I went, you know, not since then, you know, unless I would have been invited to attend. So yeah, it's not like I make a habit of going.
Yeah, but back then, though, there was, like, probably nobody there, right?
Oh no, I mean, there was lots of people there. It was just much smaller.
Yeah. I haven't been to one, but I heard there's, like, you know, a billion people like, a year there now.
Oh, it's crazy. It's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, like everyone who goes now, they have to plan their day accordingly, you know, because it's going to be a really long day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good that, you know, at least you're out there still doing stuff, and, you know, that you're still passionate about what you do.
Oh yeah.
Well, Mimi, I thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thanks. Same to you.
My pleasure. You have yourself a great day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Mimi Pond. Ain't she a sweetheart? I love people like Mimi. People who are persevering, don't give a fuck about what other people think, and she's still passionate about what she does. That's what I admire in a person, in an artist. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.